Evening, everyone. It is April 11th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. and this is the monthly meeting of Fitchburg's Transportation and Transit Commission. We'll note that for our secretary that all members are present. We have one vacancy, so there's 6 of us. We have no members of the public with us, so we'll go on to approval of the agenda. Have a motion to approve.
I move approval.
Second.
Is there any changes that anybody would like to see? Bill.
Just a question, what is this item 5D?
That was added at the request. That is the
your discussion
the lightning rod for discussing how we communicate our findings and recommendations to the council.
Okay, I mean, as a little bit puzzled, this issue, the ordinance has been adopted. It's
Yep.
a settled matter.
But we're going to talk about that one because that's the one that I think there was a question about. So I just said put it on the agenda, but Ross or Dina put that on, and I think that was completely appropriate. Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's unanimous. All right, on to discussion items. We have a guest, Liz. Oh, wait, what did I, checked the wrong thing. Hang on, Liz. Let's have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Okay, thank you. Any discussion, changes, amendments, errors noticed?
Yeah, so under 6E, there's a line that says, the second to last line says, motion to amend made by comma, seconded by comma.
Yeah.
The adjournment line says the same thing.
Yeah, so the first one that Bill mentioned, the amended by, was motion made by Ward and seconded by Ladusa.
I think that's true for the other one, right?
It was the opposite.
Oh.
So the motion was made by Ladusa to adjourn and then seconded by Ward.
Okay.
Micah, could you just pronounce your last name?
It's Lanase.
Ladusa, sorry.
Medusa is the most common mispronunciation, so it's totally fine.
Every time I think it, it's like snakes in your hair.
Yeah, nobody says it right.
Okay, I will take those as amendments. Any other discussion? All in favor of adopting the minutes with those amendments, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we are ready for our first discussion item, bus rapid transit. Welcome, Liz.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us here tonight. And as we discussed with Ross before the meeting, I'm going to be really running the presentation today. But Mike Trekbala, he's really the project manager, and he's going to be able to answer questions if I can't answer them, and may chime in with a few comments here and there if needed. So I'll go ahead and kick things off. And Mike, did you want to say something before we start?
No, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Mike Trekbala. We've met before, but I am under the weather. We were Liz and I were gonna do 2 halves of this presentation, but I think Liz is gonna do most of it, and I might jump in from time to time.
Okay, hope you feel better, Mike. Liz, can you please send a PDF of your presentation to Ross for including in our minutes?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go to full screen mode here. So what I'm going to be presenting tonight is really what is going to become the draft locally preferred alternative. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that is and just kind of next steps and updates for the project. We have made some changes since the last time we presented to your group, and I know we've met with members of this committee, staff, others from the city. So we've made some updates, and so we want to present that to you, open it up for questions, comments, and then overarching, this is kind of ahead of the upcoming public involvement session that we have planned for the end of the month. So I'll talk about that more at the end of the presentation. So about Rapid Route B, so we are kind of shifting from referring to it as North-South BRT to Rapid Route B, which is kind of the branding for the system. And this is Metro Transit's second bus rapid transit route. It's about 11 and a half miles of new BRT running way. So that's not including the segment that's shared with Rapid Route A, which is what's currently under construction, and that is the red line you see. The red line is currently under construction, and then the green line on the map is what we're referring to here. That's what's in the planning stage. There will be 26 new stations as part of the north and south segments you see on the map in green. It will again share that 3.5 miles and 9 stations with Rapid Route A through the isthmus. And again, this is kind of preparing for the second round of public involvement. So project updates and how we've responded to feedback that we've gotten from both the public and stakeholders. Features of the system will include service every 15 minutes, those high quality stations with the raised platforms. You'll see some pictures in a moment, but you've likely seen them if you've traveled around the Rapid Route A line anytime recently. There will be priority at traffic signals. So that means that as the transit vehicle is approaching the intersection, there will be the potential for having an extended green or shortening the red cycle to allow that transit vehicle to move through the intersection more sooner, more quickly. And then there will be dedicated lanes with fewer stops, a faster fare payment system, and that actually is going to be implemented system-wide, but it's going to be a big part of bus rapid transit, and it's part of what will make the dwell times lower. So the amount of time the bus is stopping and waiting for people to board, that will be lower because of the faster fare payment system. And then the system will also have the all-electric 60-foot buses, which have started to come in and will actually be brought onto the line even before the full bus rapid transit system is actually implemented on Rapid Route B.
Liz, do you
So
want to
before we
take
get-
questions during the presentation or after?
I'm kind of thinking it might be easier to do it after, just because I might be able to answer some questions as we move through. But I think if you have something really pressing, I mean, this is a small group, I have no problem answering those quickly too.
Okay, well, I mean, you had just mentioned the platforms, the
Yep.
elevated platforms, and I was just recalling a conversation I had with an elderly woman recently who said not all older people can get on the bus, and I presume she was talking about, managing the stairs and whatnot, and I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words about that.
Yeah, and I can talk about that a little bit more, but that will be improved with this new system. So there will be fully ADA compliant ramps to access the station platforms, and then the buses no one will have to climb stairs to get on the bus. People will be able to board the bus straight from the platform. I do have a picture I can show at the end of what exactly that will look like, but the bus will pull up to the platform and be vertically, there will be no gap. And then there are some small ramps that will flip out for anybody that's using any kind of mobility device if they need really direct access to bridge the very small horizontal gap that will be there. So it will be improved for anyone who has any kind of mobility challenges with stairs or ramps or anything like that. So, yeah. And so, before we talk too much about what the project is and what we changed, we, kind of want to go back to talking about why this project is even being discussed. So why is it important? This route specifically will expand rapid transit to an additional 53,000 people, an additional 40,000 jobs, about 43 schools and childcare centers, 10 grocery stores, 4 hospitals, and many more destinations along the route. We talked a little bit about the improved accessibility. So those improved platforms will make accessing the buses more accessible, but also pedestrian improvements around the stations will help. Having those bigger, more kind of comprehensive shelters and stations will help. Making changes that will help people understand how to use the bus and making it easier for people to ride without having to have a detailed schedule, for example, is kind of all part of this effort. Safety improvements around those stations, and those include things like efforts to calm traffic, improved crosswalks, some added signals, things like that. The route will serve about 14,000 lower income families who live within a walking distance of stations. We will be able to leverage $1 million of federal investment along the route with this project. So the project is about 80% federally funded. And so with the local match, we'll be able to leverage that funding and invest that in the community and the neighborhoods along the route with the station developments, with the station development and the other economic benefit that comes along with a large investment like that. And then also this project is really about the city and I think, you know, our region to a degree, including Fitchburg, our commitment to equity. The route has 40% of the population along the route are people of color. And we want to make sure that not only are we investing in the line that has the highest ridership, which is Rapid Route A, but also Rapid Route B, which also has very, very strong ridership and, you know, a strong population of color and lower income families that really deserve that rapid transit experience as well. So what is a locally preferred alternative? It's a pretty technical term, but really what it means is that it's a community's preferred mode and route that best meets the needs of the corridor. So what it does is it identifies the mode. So what kind of transit are we talking about? Are we talking about BRT, light rail, streetcar, something else? It identifies the route alignment. So where will the bus go? And it identifies generally the station locations. It is not a detailed design document. It is not the end of analysis and planning. It is not a final approval of funding for the project, and it is certainly not the end of public involvement. But it is important because it really solidifies those key decisions to allow kind of the next phase of engineering and environmental analysis to begin. And the hope is that by agreeing upon kind of these big questions like where's the route going to go, where are the stations going to be, we will kind of minimize future delays and costs by saying, okay, we're all in agreement on this, let's move forward. And it is a required part of the federal process for the grant that this program will be utilizing. So a summary of the draft preferred alternative is, beginning with the mode, is that the locally preferred alternative will be bus rapid transit. You know, that's kind of been implied for a while now, and that's because in 2012, the MPO really analyzed this, did a very detailed feasibility study looking at different options, and light rail, commuter rail, and streetcar were all dismissed for a combination of reasons, but most, you know, significantly the cost difference. So bus rapid transit is a much more affordable and much more cost-effective way to provide higher quality transit. And also just the way that the stations could work, the flexibility that the routing could offer, travel time improvements that come along with it. Those are all reasons that the BRT was selected and recommended at that time. And so that's been adopted. We've moved forward with kind of planning this system. And so now we're kind of getting into the details of this specific route. So the route is as shown on the map, and I did show this map earlier in the presentation, but I think we're all pretty familiar with this route. So I'm not going to talk in too much detail at this point, but I will get in more detail about the stations and running way here momentarily.
Liz,
But first of all, yeah.
quick question on that one. What are, I couldn't read the legend, it's kind of small here, but what are the dotted lines in Middleton and Sun Prairie?
Yeah, that's a great question. So those are what are kind of extensions of the bus rapid transit system through local service. So traditional fixed route service is on those segments, but they will connect to the BRT and use the electric, or be able to use some of the stations. So in the case of both the Rapid Route A and the F, they'll use some BRT stations and the buses, but they won't have the full stations in those areas. So the route will kind of extend into Sun Prairie here and split off into two more fixed route local buses, and same thing in the Middleton area.
Yeah, so it's the same bus. Same bus, but no BRT stations and not necessarily the same frequency as BRT.
Okay, it seems some of the conversation here would seem that some dotted green lines might be appropriate. Is that because those have been rejected or because we haven't planned them yet, but they're still coming?
Because we haven't planned them yet.
Okay,
Because we haven't planned them yet and we haven't come to final.
Yeah, that's right. And actually,
We want some time.
yeah, no, that's true. And actually, the blue line on the west side started as just sort of an arrow, and the red lines on the east side in Sun Prairie got kind of added later because it was determined to be the best thing to do on that end of town. So I think what we're envisioning here is that something will maybe be added onto the south side of this at some point. From the Federal Transit Administration's standpoint, they don't really care. What they're funding is the running way and the stations in the green part. So from their standpoint, the east-west BRT line ends at East Town Mall. It does not continue. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But I think we're alluding to something that's probably coming here, which is a little bit more of a fuzzy end on the south end.
thank you.
And then the service plan, kind of at a high level here, is that service will be provided with headways, or the bus will be coming every 15 minutes throughout the majority of the day during the week. So from about 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then on the weekends, majority of the day on Saturday. And then Sunday, we are planning for more of a 30-minute service window or frequency window where the buses are coming every 30 minutes. And the same goes for evenings and kind of that early morning hour. This is subject to change a little bit, but generally this is kind of the plan, and this is really what's already in place for the existing Route B. It will be very, very similar service plan. So the stations that are under construction on Rapid Route A, right now the plan is to have the same or very similar stations on Rapid Route B. So I'm showing these pictures just to kind of give you a feel for what we're talking about. They are, significant stations. They are very similar to what you see on a lot of light rail systems. They're substantial. They provide a good amount of shelter. They have those raised platforms that we talked about, and you can see these red panels here are detectable warning fields. So somebody who may be visually impaired can use those to guide them to the doors of the buses and where to get on. They will have ticketing machines, things like real-time bus arrival information at each station. So people can just walk to a station and know where the bus is going, when is it coming. There will be seating that you don't see yet. It's still under construction. It will be partially enclosed. You can kind of see that on the Anderson Street image, that where some of that enclosure will be, and then having a couple of additional features kind of to help winterize the station a little bit more, which are snow melt underneath the concrete, and that is going to be able to handle the majority of snowfall that we have during the winter. It will melt that. If we have major snowfall, we'll still have to probably have folks out there to remove the snow, but it will help keep ice at bay as well. And then there will also be push button heaters at the stations and on Rapid Route A to keep people waiting during the winter warm. And then when we're talking about bus only lanes, this is what we're talking about. Obviously, you're probably familiar with bus only lanes. You have one in Fitchburg already. But this is showing some example of red paint that is being used in this situation. The pavement will be a little bit different in the Madison area, but you may have seen that around town. It helps identify it as a bus only lane, and it helps prevent vehicles from, or it helps notify vehicles that it is a bus only lane and kind of prevent that incursion on the lane. And the majority of the route where we do have bus lanes will be center running bus lanes. So why do we do that? Why do we want to have center running bus lanes? It provides that more consistent travel time because there are fewer conflicts with turning vehicles and bikes, delivery trucks, things like that. There are fewer right-of-way and utility issues because you're utilizing the center of the right-of-way instead of potentially having to expand the right-of-way to accommodate those large stations on the side. It's kind of a better look and feel for passengers. It's more of an elevated service, and it's really more like what you do see on a lot of light rail systems and a lot of those higher end bus rapid transit systems that exist around the world. But we do get the question a lot, how will they work? How do people get to the stations? Is it going to be safe? So passengers will be able to safely access the station using signalized crosswalks at all or nearly all of the intersections. We haven't gotten quite to the detail of design on Rapid Route B yet, but giving the example of Rapid Route A, all but one station has a signalized crosswalk, and the location where that is not signalized is just a very low volume road, and there's a four-way stop. So there will be crosswalks, signals, and it will be, very visibly obvious that people are crossing. And just another thing to note that sometimes people don't think of, especially if they may not be regular transit riders right now, is it does shorten the one-time crossing distance that someone has to do. So if you're taking the bus somewhere, you get on right now, you get on one side of the street. Then when you're coming back, you're getting off on the opposite side. So at some point during that trip, you have to cross the full length of the roadway. But if it's a center running system and you're accessing a station in the median, you just have to cross half of that distance at a time. So in the case of some of our wider roadways, which we do have a lot of on Rapid Route B, it really does make a difference. It makes it more approachable to only have to cross that half distance. And then in the median, there will also be railings and things to direct people to those crosswalks. And then the shelters, you saw the pictures, they're substantial. So people are kind of protected in that shelter while they're waiting as well. And so getting a little bit into the stations, I will kind of focus on the Fitchburg aspects of the project, but I did include other parts of the project just so you can stay in the loop of what's going on, what changes have been made. Obviously, if people are getting on or off in Fitchburg, they're coming from somewhere else on the route. It could be somewhere else in Fitchburg, or it could be somewhere in Madison. So maybe of interest for that reason as well. But on the north side, the north end of the route will terminate in this loop area with the terminal station at Kennedy here. And then it will come down Northport Drive here, onto Packers Avenue, and then over onto North Street. So you can see on the north side, these are where the stations will be located generally. Right now, that's the plan. And then we will have what we're planning on now is a center running bus lane running up from about Troy to Schlimgen. And the bus will be in mixed traffic in the green portions of this map here. So 12 stations on the north segment is kind of how we're referring to this part of the route. And then the central segment, we are not planning on making changes other than the new northbound side running station at Milwaukee and North. But the rest of the segment will be shared with the Rapid Route A, and we won't have we won't really have any changes in this segment. The bus will just be able to utilize the infrastructure that's under construction right now. And then turning down into South Madison, we have the stations that are shown here on the map with the majority of the route running in a center running bus lane. We do have a couple portions of the route here kind of on the more northern portion of South Park Street where we are going to preserve parking. We'll talk about that in a future slide, but that's where you see a little segment here that will run in mixed traffic, but the majority of the route will be running in a dedicated lane here. And then the route, we're actually planning for the route to now come over onto Hughes before it heads south and then over onto Badger Road. And that is to kind of take advantage of the redevelopment of this area, the former South Transfer Point, relocating that to Hughes and really trying to make that a more pedestrian-focused intersection, whereas the Badger and South Park Street intersection is not that. So trying to kind of prioritize safety and accessibility and also just thinking about what's around that area. And then heading south into Fitchburg. Right now, the plan is to continue that dedicated lane south for the majority of the route, and then having it run in mixed traffic down here toward the terminal station at McKee. And
Could
then
you say a
the
little bit
lane-
more about the Beltline Bridge and the approaches to the interchange? You have a little green up there.
Yeah, maybe Mike can take that one.
Yeah. It's a complicated area, it's very congested. We actually had bus lanes going over the bridge at one point, and we sort of wish we still had them. So northbound, what we're gonna do is we're gonna transition from the left to the right and have a curbside station on at Greenway in mixed traffic, and then that puts us in the same lane that the traffic going towards the eastbound Beltline is. So that's the mixed traffic section there between Greenway and the eastbound Beltline. So we're in mixed traffic there. It's 3 lanes, kind of 2 go through into the westbound Beltline, and then 1 goes to the east. We kind of want to be in the one that goes to the eastbound Beltline because that moves a little better. And then once that lane peels off and basically all of that traffic goes towards the eastbound Beltline, then we'd like to make that northbound right-hand lane bus only. So going over the bridge, it'll be general purpose, and bus going from left to right. And then ultimately that bus lane on the right will die as a right turn only lane to Badger Road. Coming southbound is kind of similar. We'd like to set ourselves up on the in the left lane. We'll have to be in mixed traffic because of just the traffic there. But then once we get over the Beltline, we'd like to have kind of once the one lane ends to go to the eastbound Beltline, then we'd like to kind of shift everything over and have a bus lane on the left, and then 2 general purpose through lanes on the right. So today going southbound approaching Greenway, it's 2 general purpose lanes and then a right turn only onto Greenway. And so with this, it would be 2 general purpose lanes on the right and then a bus only lane on the left, with traffic turning right towards Greenway would turn from the general traffic lane. Now, I will say that we are having conversations with WSDOT and Dane County on this. It's very tight. It's right on the borderline of working. The traffic capacity that it removes is very small, but this interchange is very much at capacity. So we're doing our best to try to make this happen and make it work.
There are bus lane, sorry, one more thing for Mike. Between Badger Road and Greenway Cross, there are bike lanes. There are bus bike lanes farther south, and we'll talk about those. But between Greenway Cross and Badger, will the bike lanes be preserved?
Yeah, that's not. Those are separate from the general purpose lanes, and it's not. It's a different situation, so those would not be affected.
Okay, thank you.
And I was just gonna say, for the purpose of the LPA, we don't really even get into that much detail. Like, we show the general lines on the map here, but for the purpose of this, we're kind of talking more at a 30,000-foot view. And as we get in more into the design and engineering, we'll start showing you much more detailed plans. So at this level, when we're asking communities to adopt the LPA, we're not asking you to agree upon those exact extents of that lane. We're kind of more focused on the station locations, the routing, the general plan for the running way. But, a lot of this detail will be worked out more as we move forward.
Under the general plan for the running way, will the LPA talk about side running versus center running?
Yeah, it will, and honestly,
Okay.
It doesn't have to, but it's And if you think back to an earlier slide, the LPA isn't the end of the story. The LPA is sort of a step that lets us move forward with what we think we're going to do. You know, it's a step. All of this stuff can be revisited. It definitely is to our benefit if we can kind of get it right. Having a little more specificity like this is to our advantage because it lets us have an easier environmental review period. So if they look at this and they say, oh, I don't know, you have all this figured out, it looks like you're not sure about this station here and that, and then we could be pushed to do an environmental assessment, which would be a little bit more time consuming and costly and have a delay compared to what we want, which is a categorical exclusion. So it's to our benefit, but it's not that we can't, the LPA actually changed quite a bit in the East-West BRT, so it's not like these things can't be revisited.
Very good, thank you.
And so I do have some general typical sections in here. These are very conceptual. They don't show dimensions, and they kind of represent the most typical area along a segment. But just to give folks an idea of what we're talking about when we're talking about a center lane and where that would be located and kind of what the general configuration of the roadway would be. So again, kind of beginning from the north, moving south, Northport and Packers. This is a segment where we are not planning on reconstructing the roadway. We are working within the existing curb to curb width. Right now, there are 3 travel lanes in each direction. So what we are looking at doing is converting one of those travel lanes to a bus only lane, again, running in the left or in the center there. Moving further south, kind of skipping over the isthmus because there's no changes planned for that. So going down into the first portion of South Park Street, this is the portion that will not be reconstructed as part of this project or as part of a reconstruction effort at the moment. So right now the plan is to reconfigure what's right now 2 travel lanes in each direction and a parking lane, and in some cases a turn lane. Reconfiguring it to generally having 2 travel lanes in each direction and 1 bus lane. And as I mentioned, there are a few locations in this area where we are retaining some parking, but at this level, conceptually, this is the most common section that you'll see on this portion of the road. And then moving further down on Park Street, there is going to be a reconstruction south of Fish Hatchery Road. And so this is where we have some more flexibility to make some more significant changes. And here, we are still limited to a degree by the existing right-of-way. But right now, we've got 2 travel lanes in each direction, and then we have an auxiliary lane. And that auxiliary lane is a combination of a driving lane, a bike lane that's really not very well marked, in some cases a turn lane, and then in a few select cases a parking lane. And that's also where the bus pulls off, of course, to pick up people at the existing stops. So looking at reconfiguring that to 2 travel lanes, a bus lane that is center running, and then we are looking at adding a multi-use path on the west side of the southern part of Park Street. So connecting up with the path that that will continue just a little bit south of this, I believe. And then this is just a rendering of kind of what we're talking about for Park Street, because we are talking about a larger reconstruction of this segment. We're also looking at ways we can add more trees. And so we're looking at widening the terrace here and having some larger trees to provide more shade to that path and the existing sidewalk and things like that. And then on Fish Hatchery Road from Badger to Cahill, Maine, again, generally speaking, there's a few different variations as we just kind of were talking about with the Beltline approaches, but looking at generally having what's right now 2 travel lanes and a shared bus bike lane. So I should probably update the extents because I think this is a little bit further south. Because you mentioned there is a designated bike lane a little bit further it's more in the northern part of this segment, so I'm gonna have to update this. But generally, we have that shared bus bike lane and the 2 travel lanes. So right now, the recommendation is to convert that to 2 travel lanes and then a center running bus lane, and with that path that is existing on the side. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this recommendation here, and then we can talk about it more. But really, the path that is there provides a more appropriate facility for all ages and abilities. And that is really the way that we look at bike facilities, is to provide the all ages and abilities option, encourages bicycling in those high volume, high speed areas. And then this is just a couple of graphics that relate to that connection. I think you are all familiar with this, but we just want to focus on this when we're talking about what facility we want to prioritize. And it is really that separated path that we have out there, that you all have out there right now.
Yeah, if I could just jump in here for a second. So we know that there are different roadway users that use different facilities, and there are people that use the shared bus and bike lanes. This street is clearly in the area where, we're looking for an off-street facility. We find that at least in the city of Madison, where we provide both, we find that, nearly everybody is using the off-street facility. The city of Madison, which I know is a different city, but we've had a little bit of a shift in thinking about this over the years. And, we've really prioritized those kinds of majority bicyclists who are not extremely courageous to bike in traffic, but, for them, it's kind of an off-street thing or nothing on these types of roads. On streets like East Washington, for example, where we have bike lanes, we find that even there, a lot of cyclists just bike on the sidewalk. Even though this is just a normal 5-foot sidewalk, they say, look, it's the sidewalk or nothing. So we don't have to do center running, but we have thought about this quite a bit on Mineral Point Road and East Wash, and that's our recommendation. One other thought was if the center running lanes could be potentially shared bus and bike. I think that's something that we'll take a look at. I think that idea might have some merit. One thing that will happen here is that people who are biking using the path going to a destination on the other side, they will have to cross at a signalized intersection and then walk their bikes along the sidewalk to their destination. Madison has a law that says you can bike on the sidewalk if you want. Fitchburg doesn't allow that exemption to state law, to my knowledge. Here in the city of Madison too, we've also kind of become comfortable with just, there's the rules and then there's the way it really works. So that's kind of the rationale. We have thought about this quite a bit. This is our recommendation at the time, to go to center running bus lanes. I'd like to let Liz get through her presentation, but would like to hear what your thoughts are on that. Sorry, go ahead, Liz.
Jump back into it, and then I'm just about done, and then we can have more of a discussion. So I'm going to kind of breeze through the next few slides. These are changes that we made since December, and I'm going to kind of breeze through the ones that aren't in either the farther south area or in Fitchburg specifically. So if you would like to talk about these more, we certainly can, but talking about how we've kind of made some station adjustments on the north side, and then some of that parking. I will talk about this really briefly. We are planning on maintaining parking in the areas shown in this kind of dark yellow color. In the case of between Washington and Erin, we do have the bus running in mixed traffic southbound. But on the northbound side here, north of Cedar, between the Cedar and Fish Hatchery stations, we are able to kind of provide that parking without losing that dedicated center running lane there. So just to kind of highlight that. We've adjusted some of the stations on the south side, so shifted the originally proposed station that was at Olin into two separate stations, one at Fish Hatchery and one at Cedar, to better kind of just serve the community in that area. And we got a lot of feedback to that degree. And then that also shifts the station at Wingra, move slightly south to kind of get that half-mile spacing. Again, this is based on public and stakeholder feedback that we heard. And then I kind of talked about this already, but that shift of the route over on Hughes down to, and then down to Badger, removing BRT from that Park and Badger intersection, in addition to kind of removing it from that intersection because of the pedestrian environment that's there. It also just reduces delay at the Park and Badger intersection.
How was Madison College with that change?
I believe they're supportive of this location. Is that your knowledge, Mike?
Yeah, my recollection was they asked if there would be a sidewalk connection from the Hughes station to the south, and we told them yes, which is the truth, and they were happy with that.
Sounds good.
And then we also got a lot of feedback asking about service to the airport. And so we did look at this pretty extensively. And we also, one of the things that we looked at most seriously was splitting the route on the north side. So having kind of, as you saw in the Sun Prairie example, the route splits. It isn't really full bus rapid transit, but would kind of become a B1 and a B2. You know, some disadvantages of that were and are that the existing ridership is much higher on that Troy Loop area. The airport boardings directly are low. There's some additional boardings in that area, but right now we only have about 18 boardings a day at the airport. Now, one could make the argument that part of that could be service related, and service right now to the airport comes every 30 minutes. So not as good of service as the Troy Loop currently has. But with splitting the route, it would not actually improve the frequency to the airport. So it would be a 30-minute frequency, and it would then decrease the frequency to that Troy Loop area. So, you know, right now we are making the recommendation that we continue with the Troy Loop area and then continue to have the existing route D2 serve the airport, because we do think it's really important to serve that core area, kind of in that Kennedy Heights area, if you're familiar with the north side, and that existing ridership base at this time. And then the Sherman Avenue route was discussed. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this, but Sherman Avenue runs parallel to Packers. It's a narrower street. It would serve a similar number of people and jobs. And the existing ridership on, again, that D2 in this segment is about the same as on the Packers Avenue segment. But because it does not have enough width to allow for dedicated lanes, we're really keeping our recommendation on Packers Avenue. And then the Fitchburg extension. So we'll talk a little bit more detail about this, and we can either have a conversation now or at the end. But we did look into the recommendation of extending the route to Lacey Road in Fitchburg. Right now, the planned terminal is on that Triverton Pike Drive that you saw. But then we looked at extending it. Of course, it would serve City Hall, the library, the employers and residents along that segment, and kind of potentially prepares for future transit-oriented development, or could maybe encourage more of that. But right now, the concerns are that the level of service just really doesn't match the land use that's out there right now. We don't think it will have the ridership demand that really supports a rapid transit service, and particularly because of the operating costs that you know, would come along with a 15-minute service frequency. We don't think that the ridership demand and the land use really match that at this point. So what we are recommending is extending and expanding service on the existing routes 65 and 75 to better serve Fitchburg and then connect into the bus rapid transit. And then discussing that we could plan for a future extension of Rapid Route B or increase frequency on local routes.
Yeah, and so, sorry if I could just jump in. Yeah, so the way this could work is, this could be, in general, it's taking the first steps towards expansion of service down here. And it's increasing Route 65 from a route that only runs during rush hour to a route that runs all day. Route 75 also would be expanded to a route that runs all day, at least in Fitchburg. If Verona or Epic wanted to extend it farther, we could extend it farther, of course. But those routes could feed into each other. So the 65 going into the 75 and the 75 going into the 65, which would provide some nice crosstown connections within Fitchburg from the west side of Fitchburg to the east side of Fitchburg, connected in with kind of the center of Fitchburg with connections to Route B. Or it could be some kind of extension of Route B where every, 1 out of 4, 1 out of 2 trips of Route B goes to the end of the line and then continues as the 65 or continues as the 75. We're leaving it as kind of a vague concept. Again, with the LPA, this is way more detailed than we typically get in an LPA. But the concept is to just kind of put this out there and let it be flexible enough that as we plan and as we know what resources are available and so forth, it gives us the flexibility to put this together in different ways. What we're really seeing is a pretty nice connection point on Treverton Pike Drive. That's where all those 3 routes would come together. Looking at bringing the 65 from the Fitchburg Civic Campus up to Treverton Pike Drive, that would run along, I think it's called Mickelson.
Mm-hmm.
That's really a better place for that route as opposed to Fish Hatchery. If it were BRT, it would kind of have to be on Fish Hatchery. Fish Hatchery is more of a BRT street. But anyway, we feel like this is what would evolve into kind of that fuzziness of the dashed lines extending from the bottom of the B.
Mike, if there was all-day 75 service within Fitchburg, where would the western terminus be?
I think it would probably be Maple Grove, or it could be the Super Target.
Okay.
But somewhere in there.
Because the
Right now it
75 to Verona doesn't go that far.
I think it does now. It goes all the way to Maple Grove and then
Oh.
goes down. It doesn't go on the highway anymore.
Oh, okay.
We just quietly made that change. Didn't tell anybody.
Well, I'm sure that the people that ride it know, but I don't. Thank you.
Yeah. No,
Exciting.
I'm joking, but yeah, that was actually a little change that we did to kind of give a little bit more access to the route. It added very little travel time, and so now it does that route, and that's sort of conveniently. I think the Fitchburg boundary is at the Super Target, but it might make sense for the city. Yeah, it might make sense for the city of Madison to just somehow fund that last few blocks to get it to Maple Grove. That would connect it with routes D2 and E, I think, are down there.
If the bus rapid transit and 75 and the 65 all met on Treverton Pike, how does that work? Is there a separate non-BRT bus stop on that road? Or do those buses stop?
No, okay. So the way it would work is everything would loop clockwise. So it would go north on Treverton Pike Drive. And so there'd be a BRT station kind of at the north end probably, and a local bus stop or two south of that.
Okay.
Basically, we can make it work with the engineering that will come down the line.
It's a pretty wide street there,
Yeah.
so that's actually kind of nice.
So conventional buses do not match up height-wise with BRT stations?
Correct, yeah, the problem is we can't deploy the ramp without kneeling the bus. And so if you kneel the bus, you know, the floor height of the bus goes down to like 8 inches, and the platform height is 13.5 inches, so the floor of the bus is below the platform, and then you deploy the ramp and it can't, you know, it's going uphill, it can't do it.
Yep.
But it's fairly simple to just have a bit of concrete, you know, before or after. It's not a problem. Like you'll see this in a lot of BRT systems where they do something like this, and all you need is a concrete boarding pad, you know, either before or after the platform.
The Trevorton Pike Station would be on the side because there's no median, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And
that's where we'd have a charging.
It only needs to be on one side because of the loop there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to go up one, Liz, I think that shows it a little bit better. Maybe it doesn't. Oh, no, this is it. Oh, no, this is, no. You can go back. So, yeah, it would do a clockwise loop going southbound on Fish. Yeah, there you go. That's what I was looking for. So that loop there on the south end would be clockwise. And so you just have one BRT station in the northbound direction, not two. And then we'd do a concrete pad or two for local service, probably south of there, would be my guess. And so there we would have our charging infrastructure. So we would have a overhead mast with a catenary system that comes down and charges the bus. And then there'd be a little building that hides some of the electrical components and also has 2 bathrooms for the drivers and a little closet. And it's convenient because that parcel to the east of Trevorton Pike is a stormwater feature. So it's, you know, we don't need to buy out any properties or anything to put that in.
That's true.
What about like parking availability, if that's where you're asking people to get on? If they're, say, riding downtown, it's pretty dense for businesses right now.
There's street parking there. I mean, it wouldn't be, technically people wouldn't park in the business lots, but there is a lot of street parking over there throughout the neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's come to mind as well as that, you know, people probably would park on the street and use the system. You know, as long as it's not causing any overflowing or overloading of neighborhood parking, you know, Metro's come to sort of embrace that or look the other way on it, depending on your point of view. You know, it's sort of in general, the city of Madison has sort of said, how can we combine parking, you know, rather than having specific parking lots for park and ride and then park and ride for, you know, this business and that business, but how can you kind of reduce it? Right now, a lot of people are parking at the pave and taking the 75 and the B in. So
There's a lot of parking around the Cahill Main Station too. So if someone wanted to take the BRT downtown and drive to it, that would be a better place maybe than Trevorton Pike.
I think they'd have a couple options, yeah.
There's lots of parking. You could just have to rent from space. In terms of like, so as the bus comes south, it turns on Cahill Main and then turns back onto Fish Hatch. They're all right turns, right? But then when it goes back northbound, is it gonna go back to Cahill Main or is it just gonna skip Cahill Main and go to High Ridge?
It'll go both ways on Cahill Main. So it'll do that deviation in both directions. And that was something that we looked at quite a bit as well. you know, the reality is most of the development and the where people live is kind of up the hill, up there, and you know, we used to go farther into that neighborhood, and when we pulled back to basically what's shown there, we even still got a few complaints. So you know, thinking about it would save a couple minutes to just stay on Fish Hatchery, but we don't think it would really be adequate service to that neighborhood. And the alternative of providing some other local route that would go up in there would be prohibitively expensive. So, you know, you think about it, you're only costing two minutes or something for whoever gets on and off at Treverton Pike Drive, right? So, and I guess whoever's connecting south of there. But we saw that as a worthwhile investment in travel time to go that little distance to provide better service to that neighborhood. But definitely open to other thoughts on that as well.
Cahill, Maine is also a side station.
Correct. Yep. So what we would probably do there is do what's called bus bulbs. So the what's now a parking lane would be filled in. So the bus would stop in the lane and would not have to pull out into the parking lane. That also minimizes the parking loss because you only need to fill in where the parking is. You don't need extra parking spaces for the bus to pull in and pull out.
I guess I just don't understand, like, so if Cahill Maine only goes southbound, somebody that wants to go northbound just gets on and then loops around past Treverton Pike and then goes.
No, it goes north.
They're doing a left.
It goes northbound too.
Yeah, it goes both
Yeah.
directions, it'll stop at Cahill, Maine.
Yeah.
It has to be a side,
But I'm just saying
there will be
why-
stops on both sides.
I'm just saying, why does it need to? Because like the only benefit of it going to Cahill, Maine is for people going from Treverton to Cahill, Maine. Like that's the only
Like on the
piece
way
that would be missing.
Yeah.
Like otherwise, anyone that gets on a Cahill, Maine would just loop around on Treverton and then go up north. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is that not making sense? Like, why not just skip it on the way north? And then you avoid those two left turns, which I understand that theoretically they can be simple, but that you can get really trafficy in those parts of Fish Hatchery Road at certain times of day, and I could see that causing a real
I mean, I
problem.
think the argument would be that then anyone who lives in that area and wants to go north would have reduced service just because it's a little bit harder for the bus. You know what I mean?
So it wouldn't
Okay.
stop as frequently, is that because the bus would stop and then it would loop around and would come back and stop again, right? So it's like, it's about the frequency of the stop, is that the benefit of
The
it?
only people that,
It's about the
people who get on at Treverton Pike, which probably is not very many, but it's possible that people might want to go to the grocery store or the Great Dane and
That's
not want to
true.
have to deal with crossing the key road
Yeah, that's
on
true.
foot.
Yeah, and the other thing about looping
Yeah.
around is that the Treverton Pike stop is where the driver's gonna go to the bathroom, the bus is gonna charge itself, and the,
Oh, so it's a long
It's
stop.
like
and if they're running ahead of schedule, they're gonna dwell there extra to get back to schedule.
Got it.
So that means the people who are coming from Cahill, Maine, that want to go north would be delayed.
They'd be inconvenienced by that. Okay,
Mhm.
okay, I'm sold. Just wanted to ask.
That was a good question.
Can I ask a question about the schedule? Even with the current east-west line, has there ever been thought about increasing at nighttime when there's like events downtown, either like Cold Center events or concerts on the square or something, to do 15 minutes as opposed to 30 minutes? Or is there just not enough volume that would make that easier?
Yeah, that's tricky because we have our schedules and we have our driver picks where the drivers pick what they're going to do, and it all has to kind of run fairly consistently. It's pretty easy to throw one or two extra buses out there. It's pretty difficult to say, you know, today is going to be a 15-minute day and tomorrow is going to be a 30-minute day. It does run kind of like a clock at at Metro. It's not impossible, and it is something we've thought about. What we've typically done is we've just thrown extra buses at it.
I think you're talking about
We
the
know
same
that.
thing. You're not talking about scheduled extra things, you're just talking about more headway when there's an evening Badger football game. More buses on the route than will normally
More
be.
or less, yeah.
You know, so if you've got Camp Randall emptying out, you might want buses every 10 minutes on a Saturday night.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying is we wouldn't typically put more buses on the entire route and say this route is running every 15 minutes now. What we do is we just throw an extra bus ahead of the exodus from Camp Randall or whatever to pick up some of the extra people and stay on schedule so that things can kind of have the capacity and that they need. But it'd be pretty difficult to put buses on the entire route. If that makes sense. So I guess the answer is yeah, sort of. I think ultimately we'd like to see the system grow to just have more frequency in general. For example, maybe going to every 10 minutes instead of every 15, pushing out the Saturday and Sundays, pushing out the evenings. Maybe we go to 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. Generally, we like that.
I was gonna ask about
Yeah, and
overnight service too, like, are we gonna run the danger that we strand people who take a bus to an event and that doesn't get out until after the bus service has stopped? I mean, people go to a concert
Well, this is
or something that goes, and they don't get out till after midnight, there's no bus till 5 a.m.
yeah. I mean, there's some situations where you're just sort of in Uber or taxi range here. Again, we'd like to see the span be expanded as well. Right now, we're running a little bit past midnight, but we'd like to see that be pushed out. We'd like to see overnight service. It's just a matter of funding and priorities. But at the moment, with the resources that we have, we run till about midnight.
Yeah, and that's the
Yeah,
case right now, and it can change.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in and say we have been hearing that feedback. So the last several stakeholder meetings I've done, that's probably been the number one question or comment is, can we get later service? Can we get more frequent service at night? And so I think we are starting to hear more of that. So, I mean, we'll see how that pans out with funding, but it is something that I've been hearing quite a bit of lately. And also to serve better serve second shift and third shift jobs too.
I have a question about the current bus,
Yeah.
just because the current Route B, the KO Main is the last stop, right? Has there been any?
Correct. Yeah.
Has there been any consideration of extending that to make Triverton Pike the last stop and start conditioning people to use that additional stop?
Yeah, I think we could. I think right now our focus is on getting the east-west BRT system running and the north-south BRT, getting Route B electrified. So this fall we're electrifying basically 4 routes. But I think there would be some appetite for going ahead and doing this change now. We've sort of packaged it with Rapid Route B, but it's sort of independent of it. It could be done anytime. I mean, we looked at it and just like, well, you can go. Where it started was we said we need a place to have the bus lay over and get charged, and we said, where are we going to do it? And we said, if we just drive one more stop down to Triverton Pike, that's a nice place to do it. And then we said, well, that's kind of a nice place to have an end of the line anyway. So I think there would be some appetite to doing that sooner.
It's also, there's a big difference between that stop and KO Main. There's a lot of seniors in that area that they could walk to Triverton Pike, but they might not want to cross they cross McKee to get, it's just it's actually kind of an ordeal to get from those 2 stops by walking for some individuals. So if we were able to extend the line, there was some money set aside in the budget for adding transit route lines. I don't know if we recall this. and there's some contingency funding that we could potentially, if it's possible to even do this calendar year, like, we could probably find the funding to do that, so.
Was there ever any talk about Chapel Valley? One block to the west? That's a signalized intersection and it's much closer to the population that Gabriella was just talking about.
Oh, I see. No, there hasn't been a whole lot of thought about that. Let me take a look here.
Yeah.
The land acquisition would not be as easy because you've got businesses and residences on both sides there. But in terms of service, for example, if the charging station, and I don't know about whether there's room or not, but if the charging station could be moved down to Brendan, and then it could loop over to Chapel Valley and back up, except that then you need another station. I mean, it's hard to get out of the mindset of you just put up another sign and you've got another bus stop.
Yeah. But the reason that
Right.
I do think that you introduce the bus traffic with, like, pedestrian traffic with the park,
Yep.
which I think is a huge complexity that I don't think is a good idea. Because there was a lot of issues specifically on Chapel Valley around Mickey Farms Park, as Ross knows. So I worry about adding a bus into the mix of that.
Yeah.
So I do like trying to like,
Buses are much larger and slower and easy, I mean,
that's true.
yeah.
It's worth considering. I just, there
I would be
are,
more afraid of car traffic there than bus traffic, I think.
I always say they're professional drivers. I fear the distracted mom in the minivan with the kids in the back seat.
but you would probably have to eliminate parking on the street.
Yeah.
On
Right.
Brendan, if you
For sure. Yeah.
And the park users would not.
So
Already crowded there.
All right, that's enough of that Chapel Valley stuff.
I live right there, so like.
Is there more in your presentation? Or did we
You
hit?
have just a couple more slides,
Okay.
a couple more slides. So I'll try to kind of buzz through here. We talked about Sherman, we talked about Fitchburg. So it kind of just the last couple slides here, we just wanted to kind of highlight some of the key themes that we heard from feedback and kind of how we responded. So we got a lot of comments about specific station locations, so we did make some adjustments. We got a lot of comments about station spacing. So we heard that the half-mile spacing is too long, so too far for people to walk. We did add a couple stations, but generally we are keeping that half-mile spacing because that is standard for bus rapid transit and is kind of an important part of what makes it faster. But we also looked at locations where we did have a larger kind of population that is maybe more mobility challenged to try to make sure we are providing stations as close to those locations as possible. But we also know that those aren't always concentrated. So again, trying to balance that. Another key point of feedback we heard was just generally about pedestrian safety. So, where we can, we are incorporating that into this project, but I think we're also just passing it along to, our city staff. And, if we do hear specific things in Fitchburg, we can also pass it along to Ross and your staff because, obviously that's a much bigger picture question. We heard a lot about the Sherman and Airport connection, which I already talked about, parking and bike lanes. I think we've covered that. And then the South Terminal, which I think we've covered. So I think, we just kind of want to reiterate that we are hearing what people are saying. We are trying to incorporate feedback and we are, taking serious consideration, even though we can't always incorporate everything, trying to look at solutions that we can figure out, like in the case of the Southern Terminal. So just really quickly, kind of next steps. This is the overall project timeline for Rapid Route B. So we're continuing to look at the next couple of years here for planning, environmental review, and design, with construction probably sometime in the 2026 through 2028 timeframe. As we move forward with design, engineering, and environmental, we'll know more about what that timeline will look like, but looking at 2028 to be open for service still, that is the goal. But then just in the more near term, kind of the path to this locally preferred alternative. So we're coming to you all tonight to kind of present this ahead of the public involvement meetings, which are planned for April. And then in May, we will work on taking that feedback, incorporating any additional changes. And then we're actually planning on coming back to you again in most likely in May at some point to, again, kind of present the updated LPA and ask at that point for a potential recommendation to your Common Council to actually then adopt the LPA. So that's kind of our rough timeline. And then we have shifted a few things. So I know, Ross, I need to touch base with you on some of our dates. We are now looking at early June for the city of Madison to hopefully adopt, the Common Council to adopt. So we do have a little bit more time. We wanted to make sure we have some flexibility in there to respond to public feedback and things like that. But that is our plan for now. And then our upcoming meetings that we do have, we have our first meeting is going to be the virtual meeting on April 22nd. And then we have the Fitchburg meeting planned for Monday, April 29th. Our Brian Lee, who is a consultant for kind of helping us out with public involvement, he worked with you guys a little bit on that date. Hopefully that works for you all, and the location as well. So that is where we stand, and we can have more discussion or questions however you guys want to move forward.
So as you've gone through, I've accumulated 3 questions that are kind of the post-LPA type. So I'll email them to Mike. They're all bike questions, and I would say here to everybody that the reason I seem to be focusing on bike is that I think everything else is great. I really like the route, I like the station locations and all those kinds of things. So I think you've done a really good job. I'm a little dissatisfied with some of the bike accommodations, but as I say, they're post-LPA type questions. Anybody else?
I've got a list.
Go.
So for the 65 and 75 expansion, what kind of headways would we be talking about there? Are people, like, how far ahead do people need to plan if they want to take BRT to Triverton Pike and then get on 65 or 75?
So talking with City of Fitchburg staff with the budget that would likely be available, that would likely be hourly, middays and evenings and weekends, and every 30 minutes as it currently is, more or less, at peak periods.
Okay. So kind of.
Which, isn't great, but it's better than not having service.
Yeah. So there's really kind of no change then to the frequency of those?
Oh, they're going into.
No, 65 and 75 don't have service at all. Middays, evenings, and weekends. So this would be a pretty substantial expansion.
Those are every 5 hours to every half hour.
In the middle of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about bikes in the BRT center running lanes. You addressed that, Mike. I guess I'll be interested to hear more about that. I think previously we've been told the north-south route would be live in 2027, and now you're saying 2028. Was the 2027 like a sunny day thing, or did this federal grant funding push things back, or what's the story with that?
I think 2027 was optimistic, and I think we're now being a little bit more realistic. I think it's probably not completely off the table. I think we'd have to really start accelerating. I think 2028 is more likely.
There's several redevelopment, infill development projects happening or in the works along the North Fish Entry Road corridor, and I would really love to see less parking there and more bus usage. So if I bribe you with a candy bar, maybe you can keep the 2027 date. Couple other things. You had mentioned faster fare. Is it you're still accepting cash or no? I was wondering is it faster fare or is it asynchronous because people will go to the station, pay for their journey and then get right on the bus, or is it truly faster because you're using new technology?
New technology.
It's mainly faster because we're using new technology. So we are still accepting cash fares. If on the BRT system, there will be ticket vending machines at most of the stations. If you want to get on the bus and pay cash, you will have to go to the ticket vending machine, put in your wrinkled dollar bills, and get some kind of fare media that then you would scan on the bus. For most people, they will use smart cards, and they will have readers at every door of the bus. So there will be the two back doors. There'll be two readers, one at each door, on the back of the bus, and so you'll just walk in and you'll just tap your card on that. We're also looking at expanding to phone, so you could use an app to bring up some kind of QR code or something, and then also credit cards. It's basically an open fare payment system where you get on and whatever you have, you just tap it, and because there are multiple readers at multiple doors, and excuse me, people kind of can get on. They don't have to get on one by one. If somebody has to fiddle in their pocket or whatever for their card, they can do that as the bus is driving down the road. It's much more efficient than just having people get on the bus one by one and interact with a fare machine for every single purchase.
Okay. Yeah,
We had investigated.
I was just gonna say that sounds.
Sorry. Yeah, we had. Okay.
And that starts this summer.
Yes. That starts this summer. And the other option was a truly off-board rapid transit barrier-free payment system that would require people riding the buses randomly checking fares, which just doesn't really pencil out very well. This was kind of a much better compromise.
Okay. So the parking that's preserved on Park Street, ironically, how many spots are actually there? How many total parking spaces are being preserved?
Let's see, there's 3 southbound blocks, each with about 10 spaces. I think it's 7 to 9 spaces. So let's say like 25 southbound plus another block that has another 8 or so, or up to like 33, 35. I'm going to say maybe 40 in total. Right now, there's a lot of parking on Park Street,
Yeah.
and very little of it is used. But there are basically 3 southbound blocks between West Wash and Aaron Street, and 1 northbound block, kind of between Olin and Lakeside, where there are businesses that really don't have alternative parking, and that's where their customers park.
Mike, has the city considered charging for parking on those blocks in the evenings and on weekends to make sure that the folks that are using that space are paying a fair share?
We have, I don't think so. Right now they're 2-hour spaces. But that ends in the evening. I don't think we've.
They're not metered?
Parking, they are not, no.
Oh, they should be metered then if we're gonna keep buses out of them.
I can bring that back. Our parking utility is always looking for more revenue.
Well, one of the problems I know in Madison is that parking and transit are not coordinated. They're coordinated better now, but the ordinances sort of require that they each have their own budget and so on. But this is, transit should really lean on parking to charge for round the clock for all the parking in what we're giving up for bus lanes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I can take that back.
My last question is more of a personal one. My next door neighbor has somebody who's coming for the April 29th Healthy Communities Summit, if I wanted to give them a little tour of the city and show a little bit of BRT, what's the nearest station to Fitchburg that I could show him live and in person?
I would say drive up and down Mineral Point Road, between Whitney Way and the Beltline. Those are the stations that are kind of closest to completion. They're relatively close to the city of Fitchburg. And it's, yeah, I would say that's probably what you want to do.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep, those on the west side there.
This area, it took me, got quite the brand.
Don't take them to the Junction Road Park and Ride. That looks terrible right now.
Well, we appreciate the orientation, and we look forward to seeing your document and the resolution coming to us for our recommendation. Oh, I should say it. Does anybody else have any questions besides Bill Jones? Okay. Any
Very good. Thank you,
parting
everybody.
shots?
Thanks, Liz, for that
Thank you.
presentation.
Feel better.
Yeah, feel better, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. I'm not swing.
Famous last words.
Okay, so we're time-wise behind the 8 ball here. 5B, is that on the time schedule?
I can go very quickly on this.
Okay,
Basically,
great.
oh, sorry.
I want to talk about the agenda for a second. Grant funding and sources, I want to defer.
Okay.
We will take care of D. Okay, so I would be interested in entertaining a motion to modify the agenda to defer 5C until next time.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so Osmondson Road.
All right, so this is basically the only project that we have in the actual traffic management process right now. We had the first meeting of the Osmondson Road Traffic Calming Committee. Alder Jetzer was there for the first part of it. Basically, we just talked about problem identification, what are the actual issues on Osmondson, speeding and pedestrian safety, and then got into kind of general solutions for both of those issues. Nothing specific for Osmondson, just this is how it's normally done.
These are the tools in the toolkit.
Exactly.
What's the limit of that? South?
McKee to Lacey.
McKee to Lacey, okay.
It seems like we might adjust that to be like McKee to Schumann or McKee to Pembroke based on the volumes. Yeah.
It was like between 900 and 1,000 from McKee down to Schumann, and then it was 300 and something north of that. Or south of that. Yeah, exactly.
So just a status report?
Yep, that's all that is. Next meeting is April 22nd at 10 a.m. if anyone is
Any
interested.
questions on that? Thank you. Okay, on to D. So, Bill, could you report back from the council which of these things was actually adopted? There are a number of versions of this in our packet.
It was if it helps, it's the version brought as amended by the bike committee.
Right, but which one of these is that?
Yeah, it's the one that says commission.
The one after the red line one, I think, right?
Okay, so there are
The red line.
There are five versions of stuff
So
here.
there's the red line one, and then the one after that, I think, is just the red line one.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
So
then
the
accept it.
The first version says a bicycle and pedestrian committee is hereby created, so skip past that.
mhm,
As does the second one,
mhm,
as does the third one.
mhm.
Yeah, then there's the red line. And then the final one,
I think it's the final one.
on page
Final.
6, yeah.
Okay, so the red line is basically
The red line.
show changes for the
Correct.
for the fifth one. Okay. I just wanted to note to staff that what this did was create a commission in the part of the ordinances that is for committees. And it should be in the previous section, and I'm sure that that kind of technical change could be authorized by the city attorney.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so if you would just send that back to staff to be fixed in whatever appropriate way.
I'll also note though, that in that same section of citizen committees is something called the Commission on Aging Well.
I talked to the city attorney about this. She said the commission versus committee designation doesn't have a lot of meaning in the how we use it.
I think
it does.
I think it would be nice if it did and was used consistently, but I don't know that that's the case.
Based on all our discussion last time and when I watched the council meeting, it doesn't seem like there is any difference.
Yeah.
Aside from
So
wanting to be called one or the other.
with many years of experience at this, I think that commissions report to advise the council, and committees advise commissions. And that's true for tree advisory, and it was true for ag and rural for planning, and it's tree advisory goes to the park commission, and the bicycle committee
Didn't specify anything.
didn't specify, and it was kind of goofy because it used to be housed in Public Works, but then the person and the committee got moved to planning. But I do think that that is a worthwhile distinction. But there are different sections of the ordinances for them, so they probably should be fixed. Now, commission versus committee, the membership makes the chamber member non-voting and has 6 other residents. And they left in the business about will be the lead body to review the bike and ped plan. So those were the changes. They were contrary to our recommendation. And I think what Bill wanted to talk about was how that got transmitted to the council. And
That plus how it was represented at the council meeting.
right.
It seemed like there was a conspicuous absence of anybody from this commission speaking for this commission there.
Okay.
And I wondered if even the council, and maybe you would know from what was in your packet or something, I have no idea what the council understood about our opinion.
Yep. I'm guessing that the council had all of these things in their packet, but can our council members confirm? And were you at the meeting?
I was not at the council meeting,
Okay.
but I was just gonna add that in the referral sheet that council sees, the TTC amendments are on the referral sheet. It's just a text copy and paste of what TTC recommended,
change, yeah.
which is,
And that was the initial motion that I brought forward.
Right. Yeah, so I read the minutes today and it says that Alan made an amendment to change it, and then it was withdrawn and reintroduced as a substitute amendment.
Right.
And finally passed. So was there any discussion about commission versus committee and reporting to TTC or not? And did you express the majority's opinion to the council?
Not strongly enough that I'm absolutely certain I disappointed Bill. I'll just explain the rationale in my head. After we had our meeting, in which I kind of determined that you were in favor of the commission, you were in favor of the committee. The 3 of us were kind of waffling and could have gone either way. So I didn't sense that there was a strong consensus coming out of TTC. I subsequently watched the bike and ped committee, the bicycle committee meeting, and they raised some points that I thought were valid in terms of, currently they report to the council, so it's not as if they were being elevated by calling it a commission. It would have been, essentially their scope was being expanded while at the same time, their voice would have been diminished somewhat by making it a committee. So I didn't express a lot of opinion at the council meeting. I kind of let everybody else talk about it.
I had read your email, Bill, beforehand, and I did kind of bring up, my original position was that I thought it should stay with the TTC recommendation because, to be honest, I missed that discussion. I wasn't here at the last meeting, but I guess I just didn't see it just didn't seem like that was a significant of a change for them to report to TTC. But also, I also didn't have a strong opinion because I feel like functionally, whether or not they report to TTC, people would have the same level of influence because.
The council sees a report from every committee and commission. They see everybody's opinion on every resolution. It just
didn't feel very consequential to me. So I made the argument, and I made the argument, and then there was a bike rep there that said the bike committee, 2 reps in the bike committee were there. And he talked about how the bike committee is broader than just transit. It's like health and wellness, and there's like bigger
sustainability.
There's like bigger aspects outside of transit that the bike committee kind of touches on. And I made the point that I think the more important issue is for we to have a bike and ped plan rep on this commission so that we are coordinating in terms of like having like overlap. So that was what I think is the most important piece and less about who reports to whom.
I think that's the opinion that was expressed at least by.
That is what I cared about at the last meeting. I honestly, even after this discussion, I still don't think there's a difference between a commission and a committee other than making people feel good because they're a commission instead of a committee.
I'll make the point too, but
yeah, like but I was, at the last meeting, I think like the really important one is I think that there's a huge amount of crossover between the work that the 2 groups do, and it would make a ton of sense to have.
We don't yet work closely enough together.
One person so that we know what each other is doing and if we're doing something similar.
absolutely.
In any case, the council has acted and made a decision.
Yeah.
And you had some discussion about exactly what they adopted, but I think it's clear enough, and that the bike and ped entity will be a commission. Whether they're called a commission or a committee is abundantly clear from watching that council meeting that they will have their say. I mean, these are well-informed, articulate people who have contacts on the council, and the council will listen to whoever shows up anyway. So the distinction between whether they're advising us or advising them, it just gets to be kind of an academic distinction, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's also true, you've been on the council longer than me, but people who speak to the council, I think there's a perception that they sway the council more so than they actually do. I think on a lot of issues, we do our research ahead of time, we read the packet, and we kind of have our mind pretty well made up by the time we get to the meeting. So if somebody shows up, they would have to provide a real zinger for, to change somebody's mind.
Well, I changed my mind.
At the meeting or ahead of the meeting?
No, at the meeting, yeah, about this commission specifically. But I guess tree advisory, for example, advises Parks Commission. But the tree advisory, when they were trying to pass the tree ordinance, came right in and advised the council directly.
Yeah.
And that's how they got the ordinance passed as it was. So it's just like, I just think functionally it doesn't make that much of a difference. Because I think the bike committee, regardless of whether it reported to us or directly to the council, would do the same type of advocacy and have the same influence. So yeah, I just don't think functionally it makes that much of a difference. I don't think our structure is formalized enough to make that distinction meaningful.
So at our last meeting, during this discussion, there was the thought, I think we put it in the minutes, but I didn't see it there, that we would recommend that there be an ordinance that would change our membership from having a member from Public Works to a member from the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission. Did that go anywhere?
Well, I was planning on on initiating that.
Drafting something?
Yeah.
Well, I drafted something and I sent it to the mayor and I copied you. It's
Okay.
like the simplest change ever. It's just switching out one of Public Works
changing,
for Bike and
right,
Ped Committee.
Okay.
So I don't know where it stands, but I did send
So
it.
that will address your concern,
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
and we'll be back to 7 members.
I should have copied you, Ross, I can. Yeah.
That's fine. Just from my end, I was planning on doing that, but talking with staff internally, we felt it was best to actually wait until this was
Done.
passed. And then make another change.
Just so.
7 versions of this.
So what you had sent to the mayor, I had sent to Joe, I figured being on the bike committee.
Yeah. That makes sense, yeah, whatever.
I guess one other point is that we had talked about the potential for TTC and the Bike Ped Committee to bring competing opinions to the council and how that would be a bad thing. But that could be viewed as either a feature or a bug, depending on, I mean, the current makeup of this body is pretty friendly toward active transportation and micromobility, but that's not always going to be the case. And so if there does come a time when there's a difference of opinion, I think it could be beneficial that the council hear both.
I just have to tell you something from the heart, so to speak. I mean, I ride a bike, Steve, you know I commuted to work for years on the Cap City Trail, which I greatly appreciate. One of the great things I don't know what your involvement was, somebody punched that trail through under the belt line was one of the great events in my life, because I didn't have to walk my bike through the mud along the railroad track to get downtown over to here.
Wow.
But, so I appreciate the trails, I've used them all the time. I ride a bike, I've been on riding this year. Most people in Fitchburg don't ride a bike. I can tell you nobody on my street except me rides a bike, no adult. Kids have little bikes that they ride up and down the circle. Almost everybody drives a car. People get up in the morning and need a car to get to work, to take their kids to school, to deliver the groceries. And I just think that there's, and you talk about how we're, I don't know if active, what your term was, but I just worry that you're gonna forget who's paying the rent around here and who uses our transportation infrastructure and what it's important for. I just think that, I just feel like the bike lobby is more influential than what it's worth. Not that it's not worth a lot, but it just seems that way, and it's going to strike some other people. I know it strikes other people that way. So be careful. What you wish for, you might get it. The next bike and ped plan might be as little popular as the first one was, and you know how reaction you got from the first bike and ped plan. So,
Well, it was mostly ped part.
yeah, but, so I'm just saying, I love bike, I like my bike, I love the trails, I like what you got, Bike Fitchburg and everybody does. But don't forget, what's important and what transportation around here is about, and it's really not about bicycles for the great majority of people.
May I offer a counter perspective?
Yeah.
I understand what you mean, because I've never learned more about bikes, and I've talked about bikes so much in the last 4 years being in Wisconsin. I never thought I would talk about biking so much in my life, although there is like this very strong bike point of view and lobby within the city of Fitchburg. But I do think that our built environment in the city is for cars. Like, we built this city for driving. And there is an abundant culture of driving being the primary mode of transportation. So I feel like if you're going to make improvements on bike and pedestrian, you have to have a loud voice. Because I think the built environment naturally pushes us towards vehicles. So, I know exactly what you mean, because I think the voices are very loud, but I almost think that that's what's required for there to be any sort of shift towards other types of vehicles.
Let's not forget how expensive cars and car infrastructure is. Ross, maybe you can confirm, how many miles of streets are we resurfacing this year?
5.
It's 5.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tim had said 3.
That's our goal, but we have
But we have a
some
backlog.
extra money from various
Okay, so
places.
we're doing 5 miles of just resurfacing, not reconstruction, just resurfacing, and that's costing $2.5 million. So every year, we're spending $500,000 a mile to resurface 3 or 5 miles of road. And to continue adding roads means that every year going forward, we're gonna have to spend a little more because roads only last 30 years. You know, and we're talking about putting in new neighborhoods, and I'm seeing these large bubbles of low-density residential, which means more roads, which means an ever-increasing budget for road maintenance. And, you know, I think what it comes down to is land use, and I'm gonna, you know, that's one of the things that I'm most passionate about is building places for people rather than cars.
Okay, that was a good discussion, and I hope to have more of it, but right now, watching the time, let's have your report.
I do appreciate you watching and bringing it up, so thanks for getting me
Yeah,
that.
I think it was a good thing to touch.
Yep, worth discussing.
So basically, I wanted to focus on some of our current and upcoming road construction projects. A lot of these include bike elements. So I think everybody here knows in 2025, our projects that are up for construction are Fitchburg Road from Tonto to Nesbit. We're at the 90% plan completion, and we'll have those from the designer by April 26th. Staff will review them, send comments back, and we'll move forward from there. So
construction in 2025 or we had said 2026 earlier, right?
no, that project was originally, it's 2025 construction.
Okay.
Then the other one is South Sain Phase 2 and 3. We're also at the 90% plan phase for that project. This South Sain is like a month and a half ahead of where Fitchrona is. So the designer's working on our comments. We met with the Fitchburg Fire Department, and they had some more comments with, you know, our trucks can turn this sharply, we need to adjust this island, that kind of thing. So that's where we're at on those. Any questions on construction?
Yeah, what are the limits of phases 2 and 3? So it'll be Danny Berry Park for the south end,
Yep, let me
where
bring it.
the phase 1 ended.
Mhm. And then the north, where's your screen is? The north extent, there's not. There we go. So the orange here is phase 1, or phase 2, sorry. And then the yellow and that little blue tag is actually part of phase 2, but the yellow is phase 3. So
Okay,
phase
and
3 is
that will-
mainly the intersection.
That will be done in 25,
Correct.
okay.
Construction will actually start on this one late 2024, just some kind of prep work.
Under the funding of the future projects that we're deferring, I want a boardwalk extending north on the east side to connect to Post Road, because that's an important bike ped connection that's very dangerous now.
So then, some projects that we're going to be starting the design on, and I think would be helpful for everyone on this commission to kind of think about if you have any comments on the design. So Seminole Highway, there's going to be a path north of the roundabout, and then a path connection that connects Wayfair Street to Savannah Oaks Middle School. So basically these blue lines here are what the city would be constructing, and then this red line would be constructed when this O'Brien parcel develops.
That's not on anybody's radar, right?
It's in the CIP.
In terms of the
No,
development.
I mean the development that will trigger the construction of the red path.
That development is actively being talked about.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, all
The
right.
barn has to completely collapse before they can.
Well, we can work on that.
Yeah.
The 100-year-old cheese factory.
Then Fitchburg Road, a different part of it. So this is this orange section, basically from 700 feet north of Wayland to half a mile south of Wayland. That will be reconstructed. There's a comment in the CIP about whether this has paved shoulders or not, based on the update to the bike and ped plan.
Okay.
And then Bryant Road, there's really not a lot of bike stuff here, but Bryant Road is this one by Zimbrick.
I drive on that 3-4 times a week. What a,
Yeah. So basically, we're gonna try to make it better delineated that it is actually a city street, not part of a parking lot. It will be, there's gonna be a lot of involvement from these business owners. There's Zimbrick and then there's 2 other businesses here.
you know, because they all have double head-in parking. So would there be curbs at all? And what's the stormwater situation through there?
So there might end up being curbs if we get extremely lucky. I think what will probably end up happening is ribbon curb, because the pavement on both sides it just bleeds right into the road. So there's really no.
You can't even tell where the
Exactly.
different parking lots got paved at different times and different saw cuts. It's a mess.
Yep. And then as far as stormwater, we're doing some improvements on Greenway Cross, and we're hoping to be able to tie in there.
Okay,
Zimbrick has private stormwater as well.
are there stormwater drains along there currently?
There's some, but we're not clear which ones are owned by Zimbrick and which ones are owned by the city.
Oh, okay, so you have to do some forensic.
There's likely some that are in the right of way that were installed by Zimbrick.
Uh-huh.
So in that big sea of impervious surface there, is there any stormwater management?
There's some for,
Drain to the northeast there.
it drains to the northeast in general,
Into the
and there's some
pond.
inlets in basically just so that the Zimbrick parking lot doesn't flood.
Okay. So there is some underground carrying
Yes,
water.
correct.
Okay.
And we'll have to add more and modify what's there, I'm sure. So, then the county highway,
Is that a reconstruction or resurface?
Bryant would be a reconstruction. If we're adding curb, it's a reconstruction.
Explain ribbon curb. That's just like a flat section of concrete.
Yes, so there's 2 types. There's just flat or there's valley curb, which actually does carry water, but it doesn't have the head on it. It's what you'd normally see across the front of a driveway,
Okay.
but just along the whole road, since it's basically all driveway.
Yeah, whereas the flat stuff is what you generally see in the alleys in Terravest and in
Yep.
Swan Creek.
And that entire section of road, is there, like, what's the elevation change and would we modify that at all?
We probably not, because it still all has to tie in
Right.
to the existing environment. So we probably won't be able to change much of it. Then the county highway bike and pedestrian underpass, I'll kind of skim over that because I think everybody kind of knows about it. The McKee Road bike.
That's in design in 2025. That's what we're talking about here, right?
Yes, and that will actually be in design this year because of the Wistop property acquisition process that we have to go through. We need to get a designer on board sooner than later. And then this blue line here is the McKee Road bike path. This is on the north side of McKee Road from Fish Hatch all the way to Seminole Highway. This is what's proposed right now. This will show up in the CIP. This is a new item.
New CIP item.
Correct. And kind of what's driving this is water main replacement on McKee Road. We want to put the water main off the road so we don't have to dig that road up.
Road up the time.
And while we've got it dug up, we might as well either, connect all the sidewalk or add a multi-use path, because McKee only has 3-foot bike lanes.
And it's all gutter pan.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is, oh, never mind, go on.
That's basically all I have here,
Okay,
so.
that is on the Fitchburg Greenway project wish list, so way to go.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for staff? All right, we'll start out with, for 7A, we'll start out with a resolution to recommend approval.
I move approval of resolution R6324.
Second.
And staff report.
Yeah, so basically this is RRFBs for where the Cannonball Path crosses South Seminole. It basically would be a second RRFB there where the path to the south crosses. That one already has one. And the Cannonball Path actually has the same or more bike traffic than that crossing. So we've gotten a few requests for it. It meets the warrants. We already have one in the area. We figured we should put one in. This one will also have thermal detection. It's the first one in the city that will have that. Basically, it will automatically detect bikers at a range we can adjust. And basically, we're going to see how it works in this application. Because one common complaint I hear from people driving on South Seminole is that the RRFBs don't always get activated when a biker is crossing the road. So if we can automate that, that may be an advantage. There's some downsides, but we're hoping that the good outweighs the bad there.
False positives.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that basically depends on how we set the range for the thermal sensors.
Whether they detect sandhill cranes and things like that.
Yeah.
Is there,
It should be up for sandal.
we need a turtle detector on that stretch. Is there a speed component to that, or is it strictly thermal? Like, for people who are walking, it's not that big a deal to push the button. If you're on your bike, it is a big deal. So if there's a way to distinguish, that might be a feature.
So there's not.
Okay.
It detects a human size heat signature, and that's what it triggers on. If the button's already pressed, it won't extend the signal. It sends the activate signal, and it goes for the same length of time either way.
Yeah. So along with false positives, if somebody is walking slowly, is it gonna sense them and start it flashing like a minute before they actually get to the curb?
So that's
A downside.
a downside, yeah.
Okay.
We basically have to set it kind of halfway between where we would want to for either pedestrians or bicyclists.
The other
to get
problem
the
is
best
that
outcome.
you can have people coming west on the Cannonball and then turn south on the
Right.
side path, yet they activated the signal
Mhm.
automatically.
And I had asked Tim during the Board of Public Works meeting, is there a way to, and I don't know whether this would be if it fails, it would be a safety issue. If it can sense somebody approaching and start flashing, but if they turn away, it would sense that this person has disappeared, so they could, so it could stop the flashing at that, sort of instantaneously. But like I say, if somebody is actually still walking in the street, that could be dangerous.
I believe the way these work is that when it detects something, it just sends the same signal that
Essentially
a
pushes
button
the
press
button,
would.
so it's gonna stay on for the 30 seconds or
Yes,
whatever the program.
exactly. Yeah.
When we talk about RRFBs, it's important to remember that they are not regulatory, only advisory,
Right.
and that it's the person in the marked or unmarked crosswalk that is actually requires the motorist to yield, or
Yes.
if we pass this law that was introduced but not passed this year, stop. So we'll become a stop state instead of a yield state for crosswalks.
Have you had any reports, like at the Cannonball crossing, there's an island in the center of the road, so it would,
The Cannonball, there's not at what's the one to the south?
The one to,
No, at the Cannonball, there is an island in the middle. At the Capital City Trail, there is not. And that's where the existing RRFB is.
which is why they
Oh, you're
decided to
right,
put
you're
it
right,
there.
you're right.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, sometimes what happens is that a car will slow down and stop for the RFB, and a car behind them will say, "What are you doing, idiot?" and pass, which won't be an issue at the Cannonball because of the presence of that island, one would hope. But have you heard any reports of bad behavior like that at the Cap City crossing?
Not at that specific crossing.
Okay.
That's a common,
It's definitely more common at where there's 2 lanes in each direction, like my wife deals
Yes.
with Fish Hatchery Road in Cannonball and has trouble there from time to time.
Mhm.
yeah.
We had those crashes at McKee and Badger before the bridge.
So it's
Okay,
not just at that one though, is it? You also talk about the other.
yep, we're
Correct.
gonna get to the school.
Yeah, so any more on that one?
Any more questions?
There's also one going in front of Forest Edge Elementary. That one is just a simple push button, no thermal detection. That's all sidewalks. There shouldn't be any bikes on the sidewalks. So we're not concerned about that. There will also be some restriping of crosswalks there, as separate from this, but just to kind of improve general visibility at that intersection for the kids walking to school.
And it's just that one, there's a trail crossing, trail crossing Lacey, just to the east of Double M, and there's like bump outs there and stuff. Is there any thought that RFB is needed there or no?
So I did a pedestrian count there, bike and pedestrian
Where
count.
are we talking about, before you go any farther?
The northwest side of Terra Vesa, on Lacey Road, just as you're coming into Terra Vesa.
Oh, yes, okay.
So did a bike and pedestrian count, the count was too low, even with the, basically school children count as 2 adults, so they count twice towards the warrant. It was still too low to warrant an RFB there.
Okay. Yeah, the center of mass for the population is east of there, so.
Exactly.
There is one wide crossing in front of the school. So is that Mizuma and Brassica that's
Yes.
going in at?
And it's on the northeast,
So the RRFBs would be on the northeast?
correct.
And this is the bike crossing here in the southwest.
And we would actually, the school will most likely be encouraging everyone to use this new RRFB crossing because basically the buses turn into the school there.
Yeah.
So,
The difficulty is that the multi-use path back to the parking is here, and you really don't want all the kids on the bikes to be on interacting with the kids walking there.
yeah, that's true.
So anyway, that will take some thought.
So yeah, that's these 2. The one on Seminole costs more because of the thermal detection, and there's bigger batteries in it because of the thermal detection, so.
So explain the purchase orders for the full 30,000 whatever, but we're gonna get $4,700 from the school district to pay for half of that one?
Yes, we have a handshake agreement with the school district to pay for half of that one, yes.
All right, any further discussion? The motion is to recommend approval. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, you can, Bill, tell them that we all like the idea. Next up, we'll want a crossing island on the Cap City over Seminole. So that they match.
He just gave you your Christmas present.
Never satisfied. So we have one future agenda item is that business about grant funding, and basically there's a lot of federal grants out there and we have to figure out which ones we want to go for and figure out who's going to write these proposals. So we'll have that discussion next time. Any other future agenda items? All right, then, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
We need to talk about the next
I have an
meeting.
announcement, there's an announcement item.
Oh, okay.
My announcement is this is my last meeting.
Oh,
I've already sent an email to the mayor and council members, especially you guys didn't see it already, but I know we don't read our emails all the time. So I've decided it's time for me to step away from this, and it's a good time, with the changing of the guard and the city council, new council members and so on, there'll be other people being appointed, so it's adios.
well, we thank you for your contributions and especially as chair.
Really enjoyed.
I would say, the reason I got on this in the first place, I got talked into it by Jill McCone, because she wanted somebody sympathetic to the senior center and to advocate for somehow, which we still haven't succeeded in doing, finding a way to get transportation for people to the senior center. I've done whatever I could to do that, and I know you all are sympathetic to that goal as well. So someday maybe that problem will be solved, but I don't know the path to get there.
Those dotted lines after the BRP.
I've really enjoyed serving with you over the years, and
Thank you.
you will be missed,
Thank you,
definitely.
thank you.
So I guess that we will keep that vacancy until the big rush of April. Well, we're in April, so after the new council seated and the mayor. Was your term up?
No, I have actually one more year
Okay.
from the way.
Is any,
I'm up.
you're up. Would you like to continue to serve as the
Yes,
mayor
and-
asked you?
The mayor said she'd be willing to reappoint me.
Very good. Is anybody else up? Do you know, Ross?
No,
Or- Okay.
we just have other vacancy.
Okay, so we'll still have our one person from plan, one person from, and those are one-year appointments.
Because of
So we may get Gabriella back, but you will continue to serve until your replacement's appointed, so. All right,
I just want to talk about the next meeting real quick.
yes, oh, right, we want to talk about dates.
Yeah, so does May 13th, that's a Monday at 6:30, work for everyone? I know I heard from most people, but I don't think I heard from everyone.
May what?
May 13th, if that's the Monday.
Yeah.
It's actually way better. I actually don't think I could have made the 9th, so.
What time?
At 6:30.
That is the same time as the RCC, I believe.
Yes, I've talked to Fact TV and they can do both.
Okay,
But she's on RCC and
Oh.
GTC.
but we don't know what I don't think we're ever certain about the commissions, but it's just something to.
Okay.
Or at that time, maybe I'll be on RCC.
So basically the alternative, keeping our meeting at the normal day on the 9th, our two commission members would be absent for,
Strategic plan,
yeah,
yeah.
so,
But also only one of us is on RCC, so I think we'll be fine.
okay.
If we were to meet the other time, does it work for fact? 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock does work, actually.
Okay, and so I thought that was a potential time, and would Gabriella be able to come to both meetings?
On May 13th, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might be able to make it, I don't know, I'm not sure. I have to rearrange some stuff, but I could probably make it.
So, should we consider that, or?
How does 4 p.m. work for everyone
The
else?
13th, I'm wide open.
Okay.
Anything on the 13th is fine.
That works for me. 4 o'clock works better than 6:30.
I can.
But I can
move
do
some stuff
both.
around.
Alright, then let's plan on that.
Alright. So, 4 p.m. on May 13th. Okay, so next meeting TBD, we now have that in the minutes. Anything else we need to talk about on the other announcements? Oh, for those who came at the last minute, I just brought these for show and tell. But we will close the meeting and then I will show you what those are. So, all in favor, let's see, we had a motion for adjournment yet? No, we didn't.
Move to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, Gabriella. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned, thank you.